everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I got a new guest on the line now. I've actually been fortunate to be on his show in the past a number of times. Eric Gajewski is his name. He runs the website, the podcast, very popular amongst those very interested in what's going on with the New World Order, the economy, finance, and how it all plays together. His website is tradcatnight.org, and we'll have the link in the description area. Tradcat Night is one of a kind website focusing in on the latest church and end time news. And he brings on many special guests from around the world to expose this, covering, again, finance, economy, current events, NWO, you name it, he's covering it. Eric, let's get into it. Thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Appreciate it, Kenneth, and looking forward to our next talk in July for your listening audience there. Kenneth does come on the program every month and brings an awful lot to the table. I always value what Kenneth brings to the table. Our next interview will probably be a video interview, so you won't want to miss that over at tradcatnight.org. And as you mentioned, I do cover as one of the subtopics within the realm or sphere of the New World Order, economics. We have to cover this because from the New World Order perspective, that's where they put economics as numero uno. And again, from a Christian perspective, it should be more based upon Christ's teaching, right? Divine law as opposed to economics. Economics would be a little bit down the ladder, so to speak. So I have on all the top guests, Kenneth, Salente, Zhang, Hoffman, Ron Kirby, DiMartino, Gantz, Modal, Manarino just came on recently, V the Gorilla, Bix Weir. I mean, you name it. I've got them all coming on the podcast, and I'll probably take a look to see who you're bringing on, Kenneth, and hopefully I can get some of your guests that you've had onto my show and vice versa. So today, I was hoping we could get into socialism, the dangers thereof, and what we kind of foresee in the traditional Catholic community. And I must warn everyone, take a Pepto-Bismol before I get into this talk, because it's not as how do I put this? It's not as positive as I believe some of the conservatives I have on, my program. And again, feel free to disagree with me, but this is how we see things kind of fitting into, not only the prophetic timeline, what Scripture has to say, and things along those lines. But Kenneth, wherever you would like me to begin, or if there's something else you want me to get into before we start, please do let me know.
Well, no, let's definitely start there. I mean, something we've talked about in the past when I've been on your show is kind of how the socialism is a consequence of what we're seeing in the economy. I mean, it's coming because we have all these problems, right? The manipulation of the system, unsustainable debt, and it's a control of the people. I mean, all of these different things, and we have guys like Bernie Sanders now who are being welcomed. They're self-proclaimed socialists, and they're welcomed by and receive the support of the Democratic Party. So it's being spoon-fed to us more and more widely accepted. So, I'll let you take it from there. Where are we and how is socialism playing out? And then, I'll comment from there.
Sure, absolutely. Well, start with, obviously socialism, theory or system of social organization that advocates the vesting of ownership and control of the means of production and distribution by capital land in the community as a whole. Now, it's very interesting. You have, Lenin and these Marxists, which ultimately say the end game of socialism is actually the next step, which is communism. This is why I've always argued in my own articles, Kenneth, that I believe we're going to go from where we are today with capitalism to socialism, then all-out communism during the Great Tribulation. So, again, a lot of people, when you start flinging around words like that, they get a little leery. Is this guy a nut job? Is he a conspiratorial type? No, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that are converging all at once that are outside of the economic system. So in the traditional Catholic community, and I can't speak for everyone, Kenneth, but we are expecting a complete economic, social, and political collapse, which ultimately will give birth to the solidified New World Order. Now, you've come on the program with me and we've discussed Agenda 2030, correct? Well, they're kind of throwing the date out at you right there of when they would like to have everything solidified. That's not, 2, 3, 4 decades away. That's sort of right around the corner. So, and I've asked you the same question. What will we see in 2020 here? Will we see a potential scenario where, we get involved with a war with Iran, which I'm sure is a hot topic, even on your own website. Things are kind of heating up geopolitically. Many of us are expecting the economy to either reset or completely tank. It just depends on who you're talking to. Trump could be the fall guy, what I'm saying, for capitalism and just the system as is, and then could arise onto the scene, these people of change. We need something else. We need something new. That way wasn't working. And that's what I'm saying. We could fall into either 2020 or 24 into socialism. And then again, it's transitionary. That's what we have to understand, is that this is what Lenin and Marx taught, that it's basically the middle ground or the next revolutionary stage on the economic timeline that therein we fall into all out Great Tribulation communism, where we have this kind of central figure who heads the UN, who's telling people left and right, what to do with their money. They're going to come for our land. What's in the Communist Manifesto. I mean, it's rather dire. So I think at least putting this onto the table today, Kenneth, for people to at least, think about these things and get out there and act now. You know what I mean? This is why I enjoy having you on the show, because I'm all about action myself as well. I'll allow you to interject there.
So, Eric, what exactly is the Catholic Church stance on this, and where is this kind of heading? I'm just curious, as things are playing out, what does the Catholic Church see happening, or is it a reaction to what's happening? Is it has it been told, and this is like, hey, this is coming, down the road. We knew it's coming because of this, and this in the Bible, or whatever events have taken place. Like, what are your thoughts on this? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Okay. So as Catholics, as you know, we believe that what the church teaches on the matters of faith and morals is infallible. I mean, we as Christians, we can't deviate from that. Pushing aside the whole argument of papal infallibility, which I think most people misunderstand. It doesn't mean that when a pope speaks, everything he says, is the word of God. That's not what that means at all. I think a lot of people who identify themselves as Christians outside of the Catholic Church misunderstand that. But in any case, the church has infallibly condemned the notion that you can be a socialist or a communist and remain a Christian. We don't have time because this is a 30-minute show, but previous popes, Pius IX in 1846, Leo XIII, 1878, Pope St. Pius X, 1903, who not only warned about socialism being the end result of this kind of one world ecumenical movement that we're now seeing through in Rome, right, where they get all the religions together and you're okay, I'm okay, Buddhists are okay as Catholics, and vice versa and all this stuff. Well, there's one such pope, Pope St. Pius X, literally warned that this movement, it was called the Socialist movement way back in the early 1900s in France, would flourish and bud and would give rise to a one world church of apostasy, which I think most Christians, that's just how we identify, both Catholics and Protestants. But he said the end result of this Socialist movement, this ecumenical movement, brings socialism in its train, he said. So I encourage all of your readers to go out today and read his apostolic letter. It's called Notre Charge Apostolique. That's back in 1910. Look that up and read it. You're going to say, oh my goodness, was this Pope not prophetic? We've had other popes, Pius XI warned of socialism, Pius XII, Pope after Pope after Pope after Pope repeated, Kenneth, you cannot be a socialist and a communist. If we have time, I'll throw in some of the actual quotes. Again, we only got 30 minutes, so I have to be as brief as possible. Now, the problem is you're probably scratching your head personally, and maybe some of your listeners. Well, I thought Francis is supporting socialism. Bingo. What I'm saying is Francis is not a Catholic. Francis is anything but a Catholic. I could sit here and do a whole 2-hour show on all his heresies, but Kenneth, this is coming from someone who I believe is a high-ranking Freemason personally. given his doctrine and all the gang signs he's given, the hidden hand and the 666 sign and all that stuff. But he literally has come out and said over the past few years that communists make the best Christians. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. He said that. He says some of his best friends are Marxists. Then he's out there talking about legitimate redistribution of wealth, which ties in with the whole Agenda 2030 garbage. What's coming out of the Vatican for the past 50 years isn't Catholicism, folks. Please do not be deceived by that. We're few and far between. I'll allow you now to interject before I get into some actual quotes, Kenneth. I know you're probably itching to jump in here.
Yeah, I'm just, it's mind-blowing to see what is happening. Yeah, I know you want to get into some quotes. I was, wanting to kind of get your thoughts on what we're seeing now with like the Green New Deal and guys like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Sure.
Maybe you just could comment on, what we're seeing from them, if you think this is going to be part of, the socialist plan, or if it's going to be something else, if this is going to, resonate with the current population. What sort of triggers might it need? Does it need an economic collapse to be completely repackaged with this, beautifully sounding socialism or what have you? So I'll pass it back to you with that.
Yeah, I think overall it's going to tie. What the New World Order is basically trying to do is to try to get everyone on a one-path highway, so to speak. In my personal opinion, socialism will tie in with a digital economy eventually. Again, I'm not saying the digital economy in and of itself and crypto in and of itself is evil. I'm saying that's the path that they will eventually use, because I'm sure most Christians have heard about the mark of the beast. And, we see in recent headlines all of the novelty of various businesses now wanting to microchip their employees or whatnot. What I think will happen, yes, will be a massive, to me, reset's not a strong enough word. It's going to be a complete collapse. In conjunction with this, we have to understand that via all these natural disasters, the agricultural industry is tanking. Illinois, Ohio, and recently said the farmers, they can't even plant corn, so we're expecting a widespread famine. The eventual Antichrist knows, Kenneth, that he can get to the people through their stomach. If he can control the resources and the money flow, it's all about control and manipulation in the end. He knows that he'll be able to get a decent amount of people marked, because in the end, you and I have goodwill and other people have goodwill. They'll know this character to be a quack job, but at the end of the day, in human nature, will they go the way of the world because they're starving, because they don't have water? You see that? I mean, so this is why they have to have the control of the resources or whatnot. And again, socialism is kind of that middle ground to the next step. We already see what's happening in Venezuela, in Greece, and some of these other countries that have completely tanked. I don't know how some of these candidates can think and propose to the public that it would be otherwise here in the United States. Not only would it follow what has happened in Venezuela, it'll be far worse because we're a much larger company. So we have all these various programs popping up, which you and I talked about on our podcast, like UBI, right? Universal Basic Income, happening in Stockton, happening in Chicago, recently my home state of New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey. This whole idea and promotion of Robin Hood economics, to take from someone who, let's say, to use an example, Kenneth's out there working hard. He's working 80 hours a week to provide for his family, or this or that. This is a very loose example here. At the end of the day, he makes, I don't know, 100,000 or whatnot. I'm just throwing numbers out here. And, I'm sitting around, maybe I'm not as lucky. I don't work as hard. I'll put in, 10, 20 hours. I make 10 to 20,000. Does it seem fair to you that we should have some person at the top, so to speak, a central figure, kind of disseminate down through the nations and tell people specifically, we've got to redistribute Kenneth's wealth over to me because it's just unfair. I'm not making it. Well, that's what we call Robin Hood economics, folks, and that literally takes out free will out of the equation. So from a Catholic perspective, it's a no-go. But then it's also creating more reliance on the state, right? More of a welfare state. We're also rewarding laziness. As you know, Scripture says the man who shouldn't work shouldn't eat. And again, I'm assuming most of your listeners are not socialists. So I remember when Obama was going to get reelected during his campaign, I think he was handing out like Obama phones or something. Like he was just handing out stuff left and right. And this is why I always joke with you with I call him Colonel Sanders. What is he going to hand out? Chicken legs or something. It's just all free handout stuff to get people to rely more upon the state ultimately, as opposed to God ultimately. But see how I see it. Go ahead.
They always point to these Nordic countries, right? In Europe as this banner, this example for how socialism could work here in
Right.
the U.S. And of course, we look at Venezuela. Venezuela used to be a great place to live and to had a great economic power, but now it's a complete disaster.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on that? As it's so hard to control the narrative because it's so nuanced and multifaceted, and the people make arguments that aren't always so directly connected with the actual outcome. So it's so difficult to explain what works and what doesn't. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, as you know, the mainstream media narrative is being controlled. So sometimes it's very, very difficult to get out what is really happening in various countries, especially when we go back in history with a lot of revisionist history that we do not have now. Unfortunately, as you know, in my humble opinion, I believe that they're using an awful lot of, celebrity types, athletes, people in the media who may be socialists or support the whole Agenda 2030 garbage or environmentalism or this or that, or any of the different aspects that tie in with socialism today. And they're using them as puppets, basically, to the youngsters, to the millennials. This is why you see a rise of popularity of socialism amongst millennials. And this is what's pretty frightening, is because that's kind of what's coming in behind us, Kenneth, as you know. And if a lot of those individuals are on board with it, you can only imagine what the future of America would look like. And it's creating animosity here. Obviously, I'm sure you talk about differences between capitalism, socialism, and all that stuff on your show. The big thing for me is this: one of the hallmark signs that we are close to the arrival of the Antichrist, and I'm sorry, I got to throw the big A word at you, is this revolution in the church. There has been taking place a revolution in the church now where socialism is now being normalized as something that we need to do. We need to get with the times. We have to, under the banner, by the way, of human dignity. This is a key verbiage that Pope St. Pius X warned about, that these kind of socialist types, these one world order types, would use this term over and over again. It's all about equality, human dignity, and so on and so forth. But the reality is this, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, it wasn't just Francis who supported the New World Order. We had Benedict XVI and John Paul II who actually formally supported the New World Order as well. I mean, they came out in speeches and said that, mankind is, on the brink of a new world order. It's, it's needed for our times, and so on and so forth. But as I mentioned, if I could, just a few quotes, just to give you an idea what some of the popes have had to say. Pope Pius IX, back in 1846, he reigned from 1846 to 1878, said this: you are aware indeed that the goal of the most iniquitous plot is to drive people to overthrow the entire order of human affairs and to draw them over to the wicked theories of socialism and communism by confusing them with perverted teachings. That was back in 1849. Leo XIII in 1881 called it a hideous monster, communism, socialism, hideous deformities of the civil society of men and almost ruin. He also talks about later in 1878 that's a sect that threatens civil society with destruction. And then again, I can't stress this enough, get over and read Pope St. Pius X, because the one world religious aspect ties in with socialism and this Silionist one world ecumenical movement, which ultimately, as you know, and I'm not sure if you've seen any of my media appearances or whatnot, but I try to spread the message of Fatima, wherein Our Lady was basically warning people of this one world system, the coming biblical false prophet and antichrist, who are going to try to get every person marked, to try to have this microchip implanted. As you know, given the way the surveillance state is growing, the police state is growing, they want to track everyone. They obviously want to control, how do we put this? The people out there, they want to control the population. They actually want to reduce the Earth's population by significant amounts in order to control the populace more, what's left of it. And again, this is why we have a more dire outlook in general, not just on the economic sphere, but just in general. So I'm sorry, I digressed a little bit. What we see as being what we should do now, ultimately, I believe, is start preparing. I mean, do things like Kenneth said. Make sure you're prudent and balanced in your economic portfolio, if you will. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Now, I've had some people come to me and say, that they've got all their eggs, stashed in gold or silver. I don't personally think that's smart. I mean, personally, I've said you can't eat gold eventually. Have some gold, but make sure, you're preparing with food. Make sure your communities are prepared, grow gardens. I mean, look at how people survived socialist communist regimes. So there was a documentary out, and I saw a few years ago, and I'll hand this back over to you after this comment, wherein people in Cuba were actually growing gardens on the rooftops, like anywhere they could grow gardens so they could basically make it through that time period. I suggest to you that here in America, we're on the verge of that. And hopefully, and again, I'm not necessarily the biggest Trump fan, pushing aside politics, but maybe we can get another 4 years to stave off the next step. It's either going to be in 2020 or 2024, in my humble opinion, but we'll see how it plays out. Kenneth, I'll hand it back to you.
Eric, yeah, very interesting comments. So I'd be interested in knowing what your thoughts are, maybe on behalf of what the Catholic Church thinks of what's going on with the economy at the moment with ultra low interest rates, what the Fed is doing, what we saw in 2008, the bailout of the banks, all of these different things. Is there any sort of correlation or prophecy or anything that's going on with maybe some of these specific times that we're seeing that the church is commenting on or assessing? Or is it just kind of more macro, kind of what's going on? Take a look at this. This is kind of starting to play into where we see this going.
Very, very, very good question, Kenneth. On the macro level as a whole, the church, again, doesn't necessarily have a policy per se outside of what I've already demonstrated to you with Francis. Again, he's demonstrated himself not to be a Catholic. I mean, he's an uber socialist. So with us, it kind of just goes in one ear, out the other. I don't, we don't follow him. Real Catholics aren't following what he's teaching and saying these days. Unfortunately, most people who identify as Catholic are not doing that. But in general, it's dependent upon what Catholic you talk about. Just like I bring on individuals such as yourself, and I'll bring on Leor, I'll bring on Daniel DiMartino. There's always kind of like varying opinions as to what is specifically going on in the economy. I would be more or less along the lines, I think most of these numbers that we see are just propped up Ponzi numbers, like John Williams suggests over at Shadow Stats. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work. I just recently had John on the podcast. I don't know, it was about a week or so ago, and he basically foresees the same thing. And I don't know if he's Catholic or not, but he basically sees a big collapse coming as well. I don't want to necessarily put words in his mouth, but that's what I was kind of feeling from him. But nevertheless, economics plays a huge role in all of our lives, whether you're Catholic, whether you're Protestant, whatever your background is, we all have to live, right? But what I'm saying is with these New World Order socialists, and eventually it will go full-blown communism, because that's the transition. The tribulation, when we're going through all kinds of, the beginning periods of all kinds of calamities, there'll be an economic collapse, there'll be revolutions and civil wars, far worse than what we see now in France and Venezuela. I mean, it's going to be everywhere. There's going to be World War III. Most people don't realize this. I'm sorry to break the news to you, but it is in Catholic prophecy that we get attacked by Russia. I know a lot of people want to file that under Russiagate news, but Russia does attack us. They actually do overrun Europe, and we've seen various European countries, by the way, preparing for that event. I mean, there's been numerous countries over the past year telling their own people to prepare not only for war, but just prepare long term. I think the leader of the Ukraine, although he's a puppet, indicated that he was aware of plans of Russia soon invading. Again, I don't want to make it sound like Russiagate news. I'm just saying don't sleep on Russia. There's still a problem and a threat. In any case, it just depends who you talk to, Kenneth. I mean, my opinion is not going to be the same as someone like an E. Michael Jones or some other analyst that you might bring on the show in terms of economics. But I can tell you this: I try to take the money that I do make the most work for me as I can get. Like you, I try to be very, very balanced. I think most of my economists have that common opinion: just be balanced, kind of across the board. But that ultimately, we will be funneled into this one world totalitarian surveillance state that's going to have a digital economy where we'll be hooked up to some giant supercomputer, right? I mean, there's actually this thing called the Beast out in Switzerland. I don't know if that's what they're going to hook us up to or whatnot, but I wanted to get this position and opinion out there for people who may have not have heard it, so that they can potentially take action in times ahead. Now, again, I'm not saying run around like a chicken without a head, or Kenneth, but at the same time, be aware, at least from the Catholic perspective, that perhaps Trump can stave things off a little bit longer, but that ultimately we are going to fall into socialism and then all-out communism under the Antichrist, in which the bloodshed that will occur under that regime. And he's not going to kill just Christians. It's going to be anyone who doesn't take this eventual mark that pledges allegiance to this one world Luciferian state. And again, it ties in with state worship, ultimately. People having to go to the state to look for the answer, as opposed to, first and foremost, God, and having those Christian principles in place. Go ahead, Kenneth. I sense you wanted to jump in there.
So what are your thoughts then on crypto? I know we've talked about it from my perspective. I haven't tied it really so much from the Catholic Church. I mean, that's not my thing.
Right.
But I'm definitely very interested in, what people who, are smart, understand what's going on, believe in what crypto is bringing, what Bitcoin is, what some of the different blockchains are, and how that ties into the future on what is to come.
Yeah, no, very well said. And I'm glad you mentioned that. There's one of my longtime followers, I'll keep his name anonymous, a very great guy, always helps out, via donations and stuff. And he's a pretty significant contributor. And I asked him at one point, Kenneth, I'm like, thank you so much for your financial support. Like, how are you pulling this off? And you know what his answer was? At least at a certain point, crypto. I mean, he made a ton of money at the get-go with crypto. So what I'm saying is, I'm saying don't come out of this conversation saying Eric's saying crypto is evil. I'm just saying that the New World Order, it seems like they're going to go down the digital economy path. It ties in with prophecy and trying to get everyone marked and kind of hooked up to some supercomputer or whatnot. And who knows how that plays out with, artificial intelligence and blockchain and all that. But if you can, I mean, you could legitimately make a decent amount of money. And he was doing that for a living. I mean, that's all he was doing was crypto. Like, he wasn't doing anything else. And he was, I forget what his background was, but I know he had an advanced degree in nuclear fission or something. I mean, he had some really great job before that. And he literally stopped that, focused in on crypto, capitalized on it. And I think he still does it a little bit, as it's kind of dropped off a little bit. So I would ask you, kind of in return, what do you think for cryptos going forward? I mean, do you think that that's a good and stable market where you think people can be resting more of their eggs in that basket? Or do you think like that is, I don't want to say coming to a screeching halt, but maybe we should be considering other areas?
Well, I mean, from an economic perspective, I think crypto has been a very positive thing. I mean, we were obviously in it very, very early. So similar to, your source, I mean, $9,000 Bitcoin has been very good to us here at Crush the Street, even getting back in the $3,000 to $4,000 range when it was largely disregarded. I mean, it was a pretty big deal. But I mean, my question for you, and maybe you don't have an answer for this, is blockchain something that is being welcomed in your opinion? Is it some sort of, a lot of people have very negative opinions on what blockchain means for, control, NWO, monitoring, facilitating some sort of surveillance on people, one world currency. I mean, all these things that I know the Bible does talk about. And so anyways, I'm not sure if you have an opinion on that or not, but I'd be curious to just throw it out there. If you do, if not, no big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily consider myself an expert in the area of blockchain. I would say more or less it's sort of like what we discussed with crypto, or just let's say the computer in general. I mean, a computer itself, the internet itself, can be used either for evil purposes or for purposes of good. It really just depends, how you're viewing it. What I'm saying is we've got really evil psychopaths in the world that will take existing technologies, formats, economic platforms, and turn it towards how they want things to go. And the ultimate ends of this new world order, as I mentioned, it'll transition through socialism into communism, is all about control and manipulation. This is why they're targeting people with censorship now. I haven't talked to you in a little bit, Kenneth. I'm on 2 strikes now again on YouTube. I had to privatize 99% of my videos and I've got over 2,000 videos. I've been around for 7 years now. They're now banning WordPress websites. I run a WordPress website. So I don't know, if you wake up one month and you don't hear from me, that's why I'm not around anymore. And so they're banning those types of websites. So that's what's another concern, it ties in slightly with our talk today about socialists and communism, is the control aspect. These control freaks, they want to control everything, the economics, the social aspect of it. They want to control your children and indoctrinate them. And look at what's being taught in the school system. I bring on Dr. Duke Pesta every month, Alex Newman, some of these prolific speakers on the topic, and it just blows my mind, some of the things that they're indoctrinating our children with. And they're being pushed socialism ultimately too, as a part of the propaganda. So again, with blockchain, I believe it's just who's the man behind the curtain, pulling the strings. It's all, dependent upon the person that we're speaking about. But, again, I didn't want to necessarily paint a bleak picture for you here, but, it's to get people to think for their own communities, their own homes. Maybe I should be preparing a little bit more for some type of collapse situation. Maybe I should be getting into, homesteading, gardening, looking into various areas. Like I bring on some of the top survivalists onto my show. Captain Michael Hawk, who's considered the #1 survivalist. I mean, E.J. Snyder from various shows like Naked and Afraid and all them. And we just discuss this stuff, not in a, like a crazy run around without your head, run around without a head type of attitude, but to get really thinking on all of these topics, because what I'm saying is what's happening in Venezuela is going to come here at a certain point. I just don't know, it's really kind of a crapshoot right now as to whether that's 2020, is it 2024? But ultimately, I don't hold the same opinion as some conservatives who say, well, the New World Order is defeated, Trump's got it defeated. I mean, it's just going to go away. Well, that's not what Scripture says. I mean, that's certainly not what it says from a Catholic prophetic standpoint, too. So when you have those kind of areas and you sort of already know what the end is and you see where we're at currently, we know it can be staved off perhaps and buy some more time, but it's not ultimately just going to go away. You know what I mean? So that's what I think is so important. But I'm trying to think who else I brought on my show for blockchain. I think I brought on Stephen Williams. Have you ever had on Stephen Williams on your show? I believe. Someone I could pass along to you. Stephen Williams, I think, does a pretty good job with blockchain because he has a positive opinion about blockchain. I'll put you in contact with him. You might find that talk very interesting. But
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, Eric. Well, yeah, we're right at the 30-minute mark. I think people have had a really great introduction to you, really well-rounded. I mean, we kind of focused on, one topic today, but it really is a topic that, extends itself to so many things, right? We touched precious metals, we touched crypto, we touched the economy, and just kind of where things are headed. And, we'll definitely have to do another interview here, I think in short order, because, there's a lot more to talk about, right? We can focus a little more on the economy next time, or focus a little more on just being prepared, survivalism, right. You even have done a lot of research on, geoengineering, what's kind of going on and to control the weather. So, and that's kind of something that I'm not very familiar with at all. And I'd be interested in seeing, what sort of facts and statistics and things that you've pulled out that, really paints a clear picture for people who aren't plugged in. So if people want to learn more about you, the website, what you do, please let them know where they can go and what they can expect to find.
No doubt about it. Again, appreciate your time, Kenneth. Again, look for Kenneth next month. We'll probably be doing a video interview for that one. We'll probably, as a matter of fact, once we finish here, we can even pen down a date because I don't think we have a date. if we do, I'll take a quick look. But in any case, get over to transcatenate.org. According to FeedSpot, I'm the #1 ranked Catholic channel, a top 15 Christian channel. You don't have to be Catholic to join my website. I invite people of all persuasions. Most people come just to join my podcast. I do podcasts 2 to 3 times a day with special guests. Today I've got 3. I've got Bill Binney, the ex-NSA guy that totally unmasked the surveillance state. I've got Patrick Wood from technocracy.news. I also have Charlie Robinson from the Octopus of Global Control. That's all in one day. So Monday through Saturday, I'm doing that. And I truly do cover it all, folks. I mean, listen, the coming one world religion, the coming Antichrist. I cover various end-time subjects. I cover health. I cover earth changes, prepper, survivalism, geopolitics, economics, geoengineering, as you mentioned, HARP, scalar weaponry, because we do believe World War III is right around the corner, chemtrails, vaccine, global depopulation, all that good stuff. And I appreciate your support. I appreciate you having me on the program, Kenneth, and I look forward to getting you back on my show. I'm going to be doing David Modell's show later, too, by the way. So look, you can also check out his YouTube later. I should be doing a similar presentation today on his channel.
All right, Eric. Well, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the time here across the street, the collaboration, and just sharing your wisdom with us. So we'll definitely have this out in short order here. And for everyone that wants to visit Eric's work, visit the link in the description area. Thank you so much for supporting crushthestreet.com. Give us a like, give us a comment, and look for our upcoming interviews.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Kenneth.